Fred was resting at Crewe Works. His overhaul was yet to be started, but he enjoyed resting in the late afternoon sun. "You could be one of the last 4S we ever overhaul at these works," said a workman. "Promise you'll do a good job then," joked Fred. "Wouldn't dream of giving you anything less, my dear engine," replied the workman. The works were constantly busy, and Arthur was expected to arrive for maintenance and to keep Fred company. It wasn't long before Fred could hear the approach of an engine. It sounded like the familiar bark from a Stanier boiler. The engine was indeed green and of a 460 wheel arrangement, but it was obvious that this engine wasn't Arthur, nor of a British Railways ownership. Fred watched with interest as a North Western engine pulled into the works. The engine was of a Stanier design, with modifications disguising the familiar profile of an LMS Black 5. The colour resembled that of a pre-war era, a bright green paintwork with red stripes and a large number 3 on the tender. Fred had never seen anything like it, and the stranger could feel Fred's eyes watching him. "Hello," said the engine. "My name is Henry. What's yours?" "I'm Fred," smiled the 4F. "You must be a North Western engine." "Indeed I am," beamed Henry. "Heard about us, have you?" "Oh, yes, of course. But, begging your pardon, I thought your railway was just a myth." Henry smiled. "That's all right. Most engines think the same. A reverend writes stories about us to children." "We have a Metrovic Kobo who spoke to your reverend," replied Fred. "He seemed intrigued by our vic at the time. He wanted to call him Boko." "So that's where the name comes from," chuckled Henry. "The reverend put in a good word about that sort of diesel engine to the Fat Controller. Sir Topham Hatt to everyone else. The Fat Controller bought one, and the reverend named him Boko." Fred smiled to himself. Vic will be very pleased to hear that. The two engines talked away until at last workmen arrived to oil and clean Henry before he made his long journey back home. "So what brings you to Crewe?" asked Fred. "I took the express from the island to Barrow-in-Furness," explained Henry. "Usually I don't pull it, but the Fat Controller gave the duty to me as Gordon and James have been getting too bashful for their own good. They're both a tad conceited and quite vain, but they're part of the family all the same." Fred completely understood. "Sounds just like William," he muttered. "When I got to Barrow, an engine hauling a passenger train to Crewe had failed, so I took charge of the train." Soon the engines began talking of Henry's rebuild at Crewe, and how the workmen at the works were very kind and proud of the craftsmanship behind each and every loco they overhaul. But sadly it all came to an end, and Henry was ready to leave for home. "Please tell all your friends that we are very much real," smiled Henry. "Steam will always have a home on the North Western Railway. Maybe one day you could come and work for us." The old engine grinned happily. "It's ever such a lovely thought, and who knows what the future has in store for me, but I'll always take comfort in that steam will live on through the ages on your railway." "It's been a privilege to have met you, Fred," said Henry, delighted. "And it's been an honour in return," replied Fred with feeling. Henry, the big green engine, roared away. Fred watched until he was out of sight. No sooner had the works gone quiet when Arthur steamed in. "Hello, old chap," puffed Arthur grandly. "Who was that engine?" Fred winked at the Royal Scot. "If I told you, you wouldn't believe me."